Karen dragged my daughter by her arm. My brother is an FBI agent. We moved to Crestwood Lane for the quiet. That's what I told myself. After years in the city sirens, car horns, shouting from every direction, I just wanted my daughter Lily to feel safe. She was 9, artistic, quiet, and still dealing with the trauma of losing her father 2 years ago. I figured a fresh start in a gated suburb would give her the peace she never really had. I work remotely as a medical editor. Nothing flashy, and I keep to myself. Lily's world is school, doodles, and long walks around the block with our beagle. Sunny, she doesn't like attention, she doesn't raise her voice, and she never ever talks back. So when I got the call from school that she came home crying alone, barefoot, and with a scratch across her forearm, I didn't just feel fear. I felt fury. "What happened?" I asked her gently, brushing the hair from her face. She shook, barely able to speak. She grabbed me. "Mommy, the lady with the badge. She said I don't belong here." That was my first real encounter with Karen, the self-appointed HOA director of Crestwood Lane. I'd heard whispers. She ran things differently, but Crestwood didn't have an official HOA, just a neighborhood standards committee created by a group of residents who had no legal authority but loved to pretend they did. Karen was their queen bee, mid-50s, bleach blonde, always in tennis skirts and holding a clipboard. Her favorite phrases were community values and protecting property standards, but none of that gave her the right to lay a finger on my daughter. I marched over to her house the next day. Lily stayed behind. My hands were shaking. Karen answered the door like she'd been expecting me. "Oh, you must be Lily's mother," she said, smiling like I was interrupting her tea time. "You touched my child." She didn't flinch. "Your child was loitering in private community space. The play path is off limits to non-registered residents unless accompanied. It's policy." "That's not a thing," I snapped. "There's no HOA, no patrol authority. You grabbed her arm and scared her." Karen's smile dropped. I corrected her behavior. "If parents won't discipline, someone has to." I took a step forward, my voice shaking. "If you ever lay a hand on her again, I swear you'll do what she snapped. I'll have the committee fine you. And don't think you can win a fight here, sweetheart. I am the rules." That's when I realized what we were up against. This wasn't just one mean woman. This was someone drunk on fake power, backed by silence. I walked away, but not before I sent one text Ryan. "I need you. It's Karen again." My brother Ryan is many things. Protective, obsessively punctual, and also an FBI special agent, currently on leave recovering from a field injury. We don't bring him into drama, but when I told him what happened, he got in his truck. He drove across 2 states to see us that weekend. He listened. He didn't interrupt. When I showed him the flyer Karen had left in our mailbox listing fake HOA infractions, like unauthorized child use of community walkways, he said one thing: "This isn't just harassment, it's impersonation of a governing body." And then, more quietly, she touched Lily. "We're going to shut this down." Ryan didn't come to play. By Sunday morning, he was walking the block like he'd lived there for years. Jeans, dark windbreaker, mirrored glasses, no FBI badge, no threats. Just calm, deliberate presence. Neighbors came out. They noticed. A few crossed the street to shake his hand, thinking he was just my older brother helping his sister move in. But it didn't take long for the whispers to start, especially after Ryan stopped to photograph the HOA violation board nailed to a maple tree at the end of Crestwood Lane. The sign, laminated and color-coded, listed absurd infractions: failure to wave at passing neighbors, improper bike storage on grass patches, minors not escorted by guardians on green path. At the bottom, it read in bold red report to Compliance Chair Patricia Karen. Hallworth Ryan took one photo, then another, then walked away without a word. That night, we sat in the living room with the blinds drawn. Ryan dropped a manila folder on my lap. Inside were printouts of property records, county zoning documents, and HOA incorporation files, or, more accurately, the absence of them. Karen's HOA doesn't exist. Not in any registry, not with the county. What she's doing, it's harassment dressed up in neighborhood logos. And if she's collecting dues or issuing written threats, she's skirting federal wire fraud and impersonation laws. I blinked. So what do we do? He leaned back, arms crossed. We build the case. But first, we let her hang herself. The next morning, Lily and I went on our regular walk. I told her we'd be fine. I smiled even when I didn't feel like it. She was quiet, gripping my hand tightly. Sunny, our beagle, sniffed everything in sight. We passed the garden circle where Karen had yelled at her. Sure enough, there she was. Karen emerged from her garage like she'd been waiting, clipboard in hand. The kind of smug that comes from a lifetime of getting away with things. I thought I told you, she called out, loud enough for everyone in a two-house radius to hear, that children aren't allowed in this zone unsupervised. I turned calmly. She's with me, Karen scoffed. That's a warning. Then, you're in violation of subsection 8C. You'll be fined. There is no subsection. I replied, there's no HOA. Karen stepped forward. There's me, and if you don't comply, you'll be reported. That's trespassing. Then she did it again. She reached for Lily's arm, but this time, she never made contact because Ryan stepped out from behind the tree, holding up his phone recording. Ma'am, he said calmly, you're on video. This is attempted assault of a minor. You're impersonating a legal authority. You just admitted to issuing fraudulent fines and threatening a child. Karen froze. Who are you? Ryan pulled a black leather case from his back pocket and flipped it open. FBI. Karen's face dropped a full shade. You need to back away from my niece right now, Ryan said quietly, or I'll have the sheriff's office here in under 10. Karen fled, but the video, it didn't. That clip, just 47 seconds, was posted on a private neighborhood group by a teenager named Zach, who caught the whole thing from his porch. By sundown, the entire county had seen it, and that's when the floodgates opened. Emails, phone calls, messages, people from Crestwood, Lincoln Oaks, Willowgate, all nearby communities began sharing stories of similar compliance violations. Threats, fines, notes on doors, even forced entry into backyards to inspect fence lines. Karen hadn't just been pretending to run one HOA, she was at the center of an unregistered network of fake enforcement circles, an entire group of self-proclaimed community stabilizers issuing non-binding citations and illegally collecting money under the guise of dues. Ryan cross-referenced the flyers and notices. Most had a tiny watermark, CRS, Crestwood Resident Standards. But CRS wasn't a real organization. It was a vanity print paid for by Karen herself through a shell account in a now-defunct landscaping company she used to run. She's a fraud, Ryan muttered. And now she's got a spotlight she can't hide from. Karen tried to fight back. 2 days later, a cease and desist letter appeared on our doorstep. It was poorly worded and unnotarized, claiming defamation, character assassination, and public endangerment by misinformation. Ryan laughed. She doesn't even know what defamation means. Truth isn't slander, but it didn't stop there. She knocked on doors, told neighbors Ryan was an impersonator, said we were the problem, claimed we were using a child's anxiety for attention, except no one bought it because a retired postal inspector down the street had already run Karen's name through public court records. Turns out, Karen had been sued 3 times in 3 different counties for unlicensed security operations, child endangerment, and false representation of authority. None stuck. Until now. A neighbor named Sylvia approached me that night, wringing her hands. She dragged my son out of the park 2 years ago. She whispered, said he didn't look like he lived here. I wanted to say something, but she made everyone feel small. She won't do it again. I told her, you're not alone. Karen should have backed down, but instead, she turned Crestwood Lane into a war zone. 3 days after Ryan revealed his badge and shut her down mid-threat, Karen doubled her efforts. This time, she didn't act alone. Early Thursday morning, Lily and I walked outside to find a bright red sign staked into our front lawn. This home is under HOA review, code violation pending. It looked official, crisp font, laminated seal, but at the bottom, in tiny script, it read, "Issued by Community Conduct Board of Crestwood." I'd never heard of that. Neither had anyone else, because it didn't exist. Ryan walked out seconds later, cup of coffee in hand, staring at the sign like it was a bad joke. She's escalating. Classic behavior of a fraud cornered. He grabbed the sign and snapped it in half. By that afternoon, Karen had plastered flyers around the neighborhood, calling us threats to community safety. She accused Lily of disturbing minors and claimed Ryan was impersonating a federal agent. But what she didn't know, the FBI had already been watching. Ryan had quietly filed a formal report on Karen's actions after the assault incident. The Bureau wouldn't intervene on the surface, too small, but they had flagged her for possible involvement in fraudulent activity across state lines, given the multi-county fake HOA paper trail, and now the pressure was building. Then came the breaking point. Saturday morning, the community center on Willowbridge Avenue hosted its annual Crestwood family picnic. Kids played, parents grilled, and for the first time in weeks, things felt normal, until Karen showed up. She wasn't alone. She arrived with two men in black polos, each with fake compliance officer patches stitched on their sleeves. One carried a tablet, the other wore sunglasses and a body cam, trying to intimidate. Karen took the mic at the picnic's welcome tent uninvited and began shouting, "Attention, Crestwood residents. Be advised that the family residing at 23 Laurel Drive is under formal review for child safety violations, falsification of authority, and community harassment. They are not recognized by this board. We urge you to report all sightings of unauthorized activity." The entire crowd went silent. Ryan stood up from our picnic blanket like a bomb had gone off. He walked straight across the grass, past stunned parents and kids holding juice boxes mid-sip, and faced her on the small pop-up stage. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't yell. He simply pulled out his badge. "This is a lawful warning," he said, loud enough for all to hear. "You are issuing false statements, impersonating law enforcement, and engaging in coordinated harassment against a minor and a federal agent." Karen stepped back. One of her officers shifted uneasily. But Ryan wasn't finished. "I have recorded evidence, witness testimony, and an ongoing federal investigation into your activities." He turned toward the crowd. "Everything she's done is fake. This HOA is a scam. You've all been intimidated, fined illegally, and manipulated into silence. But not anymore." Gas rippled through the park. Then someone clapped. Then another. Within seconds, dozens of neighbors stood and applauded, some shouting, "About time, and we knew it." Karen tried to storm off, but two sheriff's deputies who had been quietly called by another neighbor blocked her path. "You're not going anywhere," one said. "You're being detained for questioning." Karen was arrested right there in front of the hot dog stand. Lily stood beside me, wide-eyed but smiling. In the following days, everything unraveled. Ryan compiled his investigation, and with the help of local law enforcement and a pro bono legal team, they presented a class-action civil case. The fake HOA board was dismantled. All signs, bylaws, and violation notices were declared fraudulent. Karen had funneled over $54,000 in dues into her personal bank account. Her so-called compliance officers were unemployed cousins from out of state. One had a prior record for intimidation. Even worse, she had a spreadsheet, a full target watch list of families she considered non-compliant. The top of the list read, "Laurel Drive single mother, daughter, and leverage." Ryan showed it to me. I broke. I sobbed in his arms while Lily watched cartoons in the other room. But we weren't alone. That same night, the community held an emergency town hall, not to yell, not to argue, to heal. Parents shared stories. Some cried. Some apologized for staying silent. Sylvia, whose son had been dragged from the park, hugged me for the first time. "I should have said something years ago," she whispered. "We're saying it now," I replied. The courtroom was standing room only. Not because Karen Halworth was famous, but because her fall had become a symbol. Crestwood Lane was just one neighborhood among hundreds where entitled power had gone unchecked. But this time, there was a reckoning. I sat in the front row with Lily curled against me, clutching her stuffed rabbit. She insisted on coming. "I want to see her say sorry," she whispered. I didn't tell her that people like Karen rarely do. Ryan sat behind the prosecution table, not as an agent, but as a primary witness. He'd taken personal leave to see this through. He could have handed it off, but he didn't. Because Karen didn't just break some neighborhood rule. She laid hands on his niece, and she nearly got away with it. Not anymore. The charges were numerous: impersonation of law enforcement, child endangerment, fraudulent financial gain via false HOA claims, conspiracy to commit harassment, assault of a minor. The prosecution called it a campaign of coercion fueled by personal prejudice and unearned power. Karen's defense team tried to frame her as misunderstood, a passionate community organizer with a strong sense of civic duty. But then they played the footage. Ryan's recording, the HOA picnic speech gone nuclear, the part where she pointed to Lily and called her a community risk, and the jury watched in stunned silence as she shrieked, "Children like that shouldn't wander freely. We have standards," in the back of the room. Someone cursed under their breath. Next came the ledger, her digital notebook, pages of fake violation fees, neighbor addresses, personal notes. Too many kids, probably renters. Needs pressure, husband always away. Laurel Drive, mother is soft. Daughter's anxiety, control point. Gasps filled the room. Even the judge shook her head. Karen tried to object, claiming the notes were satirical drafts and emotional venting, but the jury wasn't buying it. Then came Ryan. He walked slowly to the stand, voice steady as he described what he witnessed. The moment Karen yanked Lily's arm, the moment she accused a child of violating rules that didn't exist, the moment she panicked at the sight of his badge. She didn't make a mistake, Ryan said plainly. She made a system. She pretended to be law and punished anyone who didn't fit into her image of the perfect neighborhood. And when asked why he got involved, his answer was simple: because when people like that go unchecked, children like my niece pay the price. I cried in silence as Lily squeezed my hand. The verdict came fast, guilty on all counts. Karen showed no emotion. Not when the judge sentenced her to 8 years in prison with no possibility of parole for the first 3. Not when the prosecution asked for restitution to families she had fined under false authority. Not even when 2 of her former committee members testified against her in exchange for leniency. But the real reckoning wasn't legal, it was public. That night, national news aired a segment titled HOA Tyrant Brought Down by FBI Agent and Courageous Family. We didn't ask for the attention, but we used it. Ryan joined a state-sponsored panel to create new legislation aimed at stopping fake HOAs. It required mandatory registration of any neighborhood association, digital transparency for all fees, and criminal penalties for impersonation. I was asked to speak on a parenting podcast. Lily's story made people feel what dry laws never could. At school, Lily found new strength. Her teachers gave her space. Her classmates, instead of teasing her for her quietness, now saw her as brave. Her anxiety didn't vanish overnight, but something shifted. One day, she came home with a self-portrait. She'd drawn herself with a cape. "What's this?" I asked, kneeling beside her. She grinned. "I'm not scared anymore. Uncle Ryan said I have real power. Back on Crestwood Lane, things changed. The fake signs came down. The compliance slips were burned in a symbolic bonfire hosted by the neighborhood. I was asked to join the new Real Neighborhood Council, one built on transparency, empathy, and inclusion. Sylvia joined too. Zach, the teenager who posted the video, was given a community journalism scholarship by a local nonprofit. And Ryan, he was offered a promotion when he returned to the bureau, but he turned it down. He decided to stay local. "Still lots of Karens out there," he said with a wink. "Might as well stick close to the ones I care about." 6 months later, Crestwood Lane didn't look the same. And I don't just mean the new welcome sign or the flowers planted by the community garden. I mean the way people spoke to each other. I mean the way we made room. I mean the way Lily could walk to school again, shoulders relaxed, eyes up, her stuffed rabbit left behind on her bookshelf instead of clutched in panic. We didn't forget what happened. No one tried to. That was the point. Karen's house was sold to a young couple with a newborn. They replaced her high fences with climbing roses. The laminated HOA warnings were gone, replaced by chalk drawings from neighborhood kids. But Karen's shadow lingered quietly. So we used it. Ryan worked with the State Attorney General's office to develop the Crestwood Bill, a law requiring mandatory registration of any neighborhood governance group. Background checks for any self-appointed compliance officers. Audits for dues, fees, and neighborhood fund usage. Clear restrictions on issuing citations without legal authority. The bill passed unanimously, not just because it was smart, but because people saw Lily's face in the papers. In the news clips, her voice carried more than any policy memo. Our home changed too. We planted a new tree in the front yard. Lily named it Justice. I told her that trees take time. She smiled and said, "That's okay." So did we. She started writing stories, long, messy ones with dragons and secret agents. One of them featured a little girl who defeated a monster disguised as a community queen. "Is this about Karen?" I asked one night. She shrugged. "Maybe. But my dragon's nicer." The new Crestwood Council started small. I joined. So did Sylvia. So did Mr. Roberts, the retired inspector. We didn't try to control anyone, we just made sure no one else ever would. We hosted open Q&As, started monthly porch walks for kids, created a resource corner at the library for families of children with special needs, and we did something I'll never forget. We held a night vigil for the victims of HOA abuse, not just for Lily, but for the families who had been fined into silence, evicted, bullied, made to feel less than because someone with a clipboard and no compassion decided they didn't belong. We lit candles. We said names. And in the middle of the silence, Lily's little voice rang out, "I'm not afraid of sidewalks anymore." Ryan stayed in town. He bought a fixer-upper 3 streets over. Some said it was a shame an FBI agent wasting his career on a sleepy suburb. But I know better, because one evening, as we sat on his porch watching the sun go down, he said, "You don't protect a country by sitting in a tower. You protect it by making sure the smallest voices can be heard even in places like this." A few months later, a letter arrived. It was from a family in Ohio. Their daughter had been pulled off her bike by a fake HOA volunteer. They'd seen our story. They fought back, filed charges, and won. Inside the envelope was a photo of their daughter holding a sign that read, "Lily made me brave." I showed it to her. She didn't say much, just smiled and nodded. But I saw the way she carried herself afterward. Taller, lighter, like the cape in her drawings was finally real. We were never looking to be heroes. We just wanted a safe street. But sometimes the biggest changes begin with one broken rule, one wrong touch, one scared child, and one family refusing to stay silent. Have you ever witnessed someone misusing fake authority, especially over those with less power? What did you do? What would you do now? Speak up. Step in, because silence is how injustice survives. And even the smallest voice, like a little girl on a sidewalk, can break it.